Hello, I am Dr. Salman Titik from Scholar School System. I'm a lecturer in business programs at Scholar School System. Today, under the module of project, I'm going to discuss week 3 subject, which is introducing and developing academic writing skills. Alright, what are we going to have by the end of this session? How to develop academic writing skills. We are going to discuss some methods step by step. We'll learn how to write a paragraph, how to be careful on and using some words and also sentences. Alright, first I would like to start by the common pitfalls and are done by the students. Okay, the short paragraphs, for instance, this is the first one. And what the result is the failure to cover topics in sufficient details and depth. So if you are starting on discussion, as well as you can do, you should extend the discussion in a deeper way and with more details. As well as you put more short paragraphs, it lowers the quality of your paper. The second pitfall is the incoherent paragraphs. It lacks a main point or which ramble. I mean that, yeah, you say so many things, but you skip the main point that you are supposed to flash. Okay. The third one, lack of argument flow. Yep, main points of paragraphs do not follow in a logical sequence. And particularly it starts from the literature review introduction, and mostly it is expected to read like a story. There should be a flow of and the knowledge in a way, in an order, in a sequence. So if you are not doing that, is another mistake. Necessity to rewrite sections due to poor quality, and is another thing. Avoid losing marks unnecessarily. If it is required, you could do, but if it's not, you don't have to do that. And overall, we can define a style and structure for an ideal academic writing. First, you need to choose a style, academic style. Is it general advice or some do's or don'ts could be put in there. The second one is going to write in paragraphs. The third is going to be argument structure. Another one is from paragraph to arguments, the other academic writing models, and referencing. That will be our discussion. First, let's start from academic writing style, general advice. General advices for the academic writing in anyone is either it's project, master thesis, or PhD dissertation. You should usually use the past tense. Okay, we need to use the past tense. And we need to write in third person, not first or the second one, but the third person. And use passive voice, be concise and to point, and use simple and formal English. Okay, so don't try to impress the reader, however, try to write naturally in a conversational style. Those are the general advices. And which tense here? Methods, result, and conclusions could be written in past tense because you are reporting on research that has been completed. And referring to your own work, for instance, you could use the present tense if you are giving a reference to your own work. And presenting information that is always true or an ongoing situation or reporting on another study, you can use the present tense as well. Recommendations. If you are offering a recommendation, and you could use the future tense because it has not been done yet, it will be done in the future based on the recommendation which is provided by you. And we need to use the third person and the passive voice. For instance, we need to avoid using I and you and we, unless if there is no specific situation. And how we need to use also passive voice, write as if an object is having something done rather than as if someone is doing something to the object. And so here is another way. Yeah. Some suggestions, do or not to do. avoid the contractions, how to use, we're going to learn how to use possessive apostrophes, introducing acronyms first, avoid most Latin abbreviations, how to write whole numbers, other things to avoid, and use hedging. Here, let's start with avoid contractions. Don't use the contractions in academic writing. For instance, instead of using don't, we prefer to use do not. Replace the doesn't, does not. Hasn't, has not. Replace can't with cannot. Replace it's with it is. Replace isn't with is not. So we are avoiding to use contractions. How to use possessive apostrophes? And here, for instance, in order to indicate something or someone belonging to something or someone, how do we use this? Single noun, not ending in s. For instance, the results from Ben's initial study. What we need to do, here we need to put apostrophe. Okay. Possessive pronouns do not have an apostrophe. It's atmospheric choices, for instance. We are not putting any apostrophe on it. It's atmospheric choices, which shows a belonging. Okay. The third, introducing acronyms first. In the beginning of the study, before introducing the acronyms, you cannot use the abbreviation. An acronym is an abbreviation for a noun phrase, so we always assume our reader has never heard for an acronym. The first time you use the acronym, you need to fully provide the meaning of that. For instance, here's an example. Within a business to business, in bracket you need to provide the acronym. Later on, in next sentence, you can directly use the acronym. But first, you need to use full expression of the acronym. For instance, Wu and Inu argue that the quality of the B2B relationship. In next sentence, we directly use the acronym. And it's recommended to avoid most Latin abbreviations. Here, what does it mean? In formal texts, of course, in academic writing, what we are doing, instead of using e.g., what we are doing, for example, for instance, not e.g., or i.e., excuse me, should be replaced with in other words, that is, or that is to say. Or instead of using etc., what we are doing, we are using and so on, for instance. However, in academic writing, in referencing more specifically, what we use it all. We use it for, not as an abbreviation, in referencing, instead of using the all details of the authors to give a text reference, what we use it all. It is required abbreviation for and others. And when citing more than two authors in the BCU Harvard style, what we do, and we put only it all in text references. But in the list of the references, we provide the all authors' name in the reference. How to write whole numbers? It's another thing. Numbers up to 100 should be written as words, like 55. We are writing with the word. Anything larger can be writing as figures. For instance, 236 with the numbers. You can write it. However, if a number is used at the beginning of a sentence, it should be written as a word. Other things to avoid, what could be, of course, you need to avoid using slang language or journalistic style. Write in a natural, non-emotive style. You are not trying to create an emotional response from your reader. That should be objective as well as you can do. It's a prime example of a company that has gone from strand to strand, could become the company has strengthened its position in the market. For instance, you can compare each other. Which one is more objective? And you need to avoid inappropriate capitalizations, text, SMS abbreviations, and exclamations. And you need to avoid also verb phrases such as get off, get away with, put in should be replaced with single verb equivalents instead of using the verb phrases. And using hedging is another thing. And you will be recommended to use an appropriate level of caution rather than making general assertions without sufficient evidence to support them. For instance, it's a good example. This research study prove that satisfaction is the key to the success of building loyalty within the current customers and potential customers. Instead of using this type of certain and general and the judgment and the comment, what could you do? This research study provided strong evidence that satisfaction is a key to the success of building loyalty within current customers and potential customers, or the WAI scheme. Based on what? Does it cover all circumstances, or a specific to the condition? Is it specific to an organization? Is it specific to an industry? Is it specific to a country? Whatever is that. Instead of generalizing the finding of your study, we need to specify. Okay. In paragraphs, what do you do? In terms of definition, length, modal structure, transitional words, and example. Finally, I'm going to give an example. Paragraphs includes definition. A paragraph is a group of connected sentences which develops one new topic, idea, or theme. It means that you are defining a concept, maybe. They are the building blocks of your writing, divided into easy to follow, comprehensible parts. Essays, for instance, are usually made up entirely of paragraphs. Essays are the combination of the paragraphs. Reports or other types of more technical writing will be written in sections, but within the sections there will be paragraphs as well as bullet points, lists, and figures, etc. Paragraphs, how long they should be? Mostly each paragraph should reflect a single idea or a single definition or a single concept. It is impossible to do this thing in just sentence or two sentences. That's why you need to produce more sentences and more statements in a paragraph. It's usually recommended at least 4 or 5 sentences in a paragraph. Short paragraphs can leave the impression that you have not thought through your ideas and have not developed them sufficiently. So what we need a brief explanation in an extensive and detailed explanation. Alternatively, you might just be writing several paragraphs as fragments of the same idea. However, you need to be careful not to combine paragraphs which discuss different ideas or ramble in long paragraphs. Yeah, you would like to create a long paragraph. In order to do it, please don't bring the different sections, different discussions in the same paragraph. Avoid to merge them. Okay. In paragraphs, what we are discussing, model paragraph structure. Topic introduction, explanation, evidence, examples, evaluation, link, awareness, and implications of wider issues. And in paragraph, you could explain, you can introduce your topic, or you can explain a phenomenon or a definition, or you can provide some examples or evidences, or you can evaluate the findings of your study, or you can link to different topics in a paragraph, or in the end you can write a conclusion based on the discussions have been done in your paper. So this is those are different types of the paragraphs you can create. And what other transitional words are used in paragraphs? For instance, contrast, to underline, to signal, or to contrast what we are using. But, whereas, yet, still, however, nevertheless, despite, on the contrary, conversely, and to make an addition. Furthermore, subsequently, besides, next, moreover, also similarly to, and the second. Instead of shed the light on example, for instance, an illustration such as that is time or place after words earlier, conclusion, therefore, in short, in essence, thus, then, in other words, or blah blah. And seconds, then, next, first, second, and third could be used. And you will be finding an example in your research. Okay. What is argument structure? Argument structure is that you are arguing something based on the literature review, based on your study. You will propose an argument. How will you do that? If you are offering a single argument, and you need to introduce assertion first, and you need to find supporting evidences from different sources, and finally you will be concluding it. In discursive one, you first introduce the topic, bring the evidences from one side, evidence from another side. What you are going to do, you will be discussing and there will be debate on it, and you will match each evidence from each side. Okay, this type of the argument is called discursive. And you can discuss, you can choose depending on the subject area and part of dissertation, which one is better to you, discursive structure or single argument. For instance, there is an example, and for single argument and discursive one, single argument which starts with intro, ban is a good idea, for instance. Health one, legal for smokers, passively, health food, cosmetic. In terms of finance, you bring the evidences. In terms of social, environmental, and relationship, you bring evidences. In terms of freedom, you could be bringing examples, and then you conclude that your argument. In discursive one, the same thing, different viewpoints you are discussing in introduction, and from one side you will be bringing examples in terms of health issue, finance issue, social, environmental issue, but two opposite ideas will be brought. Not only single argument. On the one side, you are going to bring positive feedbacks from as the evidence, on the other side, negative aspects as the evidence, and you will be comparing each other. You will be discussing, and the same steps will be followed, like the single argument and the offering, and then you are going to have evaluation and conclusion. And yes, and you can find a structure in argument, the structuring and developing. Flared arguments, and what does it mean? Yeah, you are arguing something without strong evidences, for instance, and conclusion without a warrant, warrant without a conclusion, conclusion with an inadequate warrant, warrant leading to an illogical conclusion, conclusion that is not explicitly linked to the warrant, for instance. Those are the flared arguments. Why? How do you know? So what? Why are you telling me? These kind of questions. And from paragraphs to arguments, here there are two methods, building metaphor, PowerPoint technique. Building metaphor is that step by step you are developing in each paragraph. Your argument is like a building, that's why it's called the building metaphor. On the other side, point by point, we are emphasizing the argument with the evidences. That's why it is called the PowerPoint technique. An example, for instance, reading the rights here. Forward, first you put executive summary, you do introduce your argument, and which method are you going to use, who were the writers, and how the rights unfolded. And understanding the rights, you are going to be defining policing, gangs, inequality, shopping over social media, and later on phase 2, what next? Yes. So, and in argument planning, what could you take? Imagine you are giving a PowerPoint presentation with one slide per section and subsection. Each point becomes the main point of one paragraph. If you are differentiating them in a separate slide, you can develop a specific paragraph, an argument for a slide. Or in a sequence, what you can do, if it's a single argument, you can be defining it in a building step by step. First, you develop a ground on which you could bring the theoretical background and also the conceptual infrastructure. And yeah, and other academic MRD, you can read about that, or create a research space, could be, or IMRD, wine glass model, is like a model funnel, step by step. You are starting from a wide range of the discussion, and then you are going to narrow it. And the CARS model, you can read about that. Thank you very much for today. Have a nice day.